recap. And welcome to the Lillian McDermott radio show. Today is such a thrill and an honor to have Dr. Joseph Mercola. If you have entered into the health and wellness field, the natural health and wellness field, the name Mercola is synonymous to, you better get your act together because we're going to learn a new truth. And so I'm excited that Dr. Mercola is on today, and I'm looking forward to talking about his new book, Fat for Fuel. So fasten your seatbelt. We're going to learn and grow together. Oh, Dr. Mercola, I didn't tell you. It's time to dance. You can do the head bop.
Yeah. I'm on my board, so my surf riding board. So.
Oh, yeah. Are you balancing?
Balancing, yeah.
I want to see.
My balance board.
Oh, nice. Did you create that? Is that one of your products?
No. It is not one of my products, but it's useful for increasing movement.
Very nice. Michael Greger did 2 interviews with me on his treadmill.
I know. I interviewed him, and that's on his treadmill too.
Flop, flop, flop. He would flop, flop the whole entire time. I was like, what is that? Okay, here we go.
You can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who have been listening to the show for the last 7 years, welcome back. And if you are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, let me tell you that it is my honor that you are stumbling upon a show today, and hopefully we'll be able to share a new truth with you. And so that you know a little bit about me, is that my purpose for the show is to provide alternative ways to heal. And it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, I am just like so excited. This is something that has been a vision of mine for the last, I would say, 5 years, because the first 2 years of my show have been, was more about how to be a compliant patient, what's the latest in medications, and all of that. As you know, I'm in the medical industry as well. And so I was very bought into all that, you know, your body heals with a pill. And as you know, my registered service mark is you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. Well, early in my radio career, I was challenged to go raw vegan. And I took it. I said, hey, well, great. This is good. So bring it. After 4 days, and I felt great. After 4 or 5 days of eating a raw vegan, not that I'm raw vegan anymore, but I felt better. Wow. Is there such a thing as better? So that had me dive into so many different truths that I was so limited on. And so for years, before all these doctors were going into this natural and health and functional and integrative, there was a soul warrior out there, and his name is Dr. Joseph Mercola. And Dr. Mercola was, once he learned that new truth, just like I did, but he is now in a much greater audience, where he started sharing some of the new truth that this doctor had learned from his training. All of a sudden, he's learning something different. He is the trailblazer. He's the person that when you think of natural medicine, you immediately think of Dr. Joseph Mercola. And so Dr. Joseph Mercola is here today. I'm really excited about this because it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge. And I'm so grateful that Dr. Joseph Mercola is here to do just that. He's going to teach us all about fat for fuel, which is one of his books. Welcome, Dr. Mercola. I am so grateful that you're here.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm delighted to be with you today.
Well, thank you. Share a little bit about your background and how you learned this new truth.
Well, it's a journey, and I really like your vision to be learning new truths, because it's I think if you aren't, you're missing the boat, because
That's right.
I view life as being a perpetual student, and no one ever gets even a fraction of the truth. So it's just always learning as much as you can. But I started out as a family physician and finished my residency in 1985. I've seen tens of thousands of patients before I transitioned to starting my website, Mercola.com, about 21 years ago, which is the most visited natural health site in the world. And in many languages, we're in 10 languages now. And in some languages like Spanish, we're the #1 in the world of
Wow.
all health websites. So, our mission is to spread this information internationally. And it's information I learned from postgraduate attending events and conferences and seminars from physicians that were in the field who really compiled the knowledge and really are willing to share it, and truths that essentially address the fundamental foundational cause of disease rather than using symptomatic band-aids that are frequently dangerous and can kill you prematurely.
Absolutely. And, and you have been so honest and so transparent about some of these things that you have learned, and the passion, as a physician, as when you were going to school,
Mm-hmm.
did you realize that many of the things that you were learning in your medical training, you would eventually kind of learn a new way of
Mm-hmm.
working with that and working within the system? Did you think that would ever happen?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was called Dr. Fiber from my classmates and was frequently ridiculed for wanting to get people better rather than treat disease. But on the very first day of medical school, as a freshman, on the first day, the dean of the college gave us a presentation, and he said, "Listen, what we're going to teach you in the next 4 years, 75% of it will be outdated by the time you practice."
Wow.
So the goal, yes, you have to learn fundamental information to pass your boards, but what's more important is that we teach you how to learn, and that really framed the whole perspective for me. And I don't think everyone captured that, even though they were given the tools. They don't continue to learn because there is you literally, if you tried to read, we were caught up, say we're caught up today, and you tried to learn everything, you'd be like in a week, you'd be more than 500 years behind from just not reading the literature. And you read like 3 articles a day. It's just crazy. So there's just so much information. Now, a lot of it isn't relevant to clinical medicine, but the point is that we're
going to continue our conversation with Dr. Joseph Mercola when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you.
Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Mercola.
Oh, I messed up, man. It's going down and I missed it. So when am I supposed to stop at 20?
When you see the music has started, and then you see.
Oh, M started. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
M started.
I won't miss it. No, you said it, and I just ignored it.
And I'm giving you the.
Yeah. I missed every sign. Okay. Music started.
Yeah. So those are the people that are watching us on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you are followed all over the world. The information that you share, it's a lot of responsibility. I remember when I started learning about natural and integrative and functional, holistic, I remember my cousin, he is a big orthomolecular scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he was the one that kind of like started planting the seeds in me. And I was doing a show that was true at the time, but it wasn't the only truth. Mm-hmm. And he sent me a text that really got me angry. And he says, "You're being irresponsible." Oh, that was like, at the time, I didn't like seeing that. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I finished the show, I had to sit with that. Why was I so angry with it? Now, when you have so many people following whatever you say, mm-hmm. how responsible do you feel to make sure that your truth is as close to the truth as possible?
Well, I don't think it makes a difference, really. I mean, whether I had 100 people or 7 billion people, mm-hmm. It's the same issue, because I'm only sharing information that I would personally use myself, and, to improve my own health and wellness and longevity. So, it may not be absolutely true. Very few things are, and doesn't say my views won't change in the future as I learn new information, but it's the best I can do at this point. So
I agree. I totally agree. We only have the information that we're given. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, someone tells you, it's like I talk about taking the red pill from the Matrix. I interviewed G. Edward Griffin. I don't know if you
oh, sure. Yeah, I've been reading him in the past,
love him. And he had done the red pill conference. And I said to him during the break, what is the red pill conference? And he told me what it was. And I hated the Matrix, and I saw it with that whole philosophy that's our microbiome, the story of our microbiome. Love the Matrix now. Because you've opened my eyes to this new truth. So it's amazing. Here we go.
373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow together. Now, today's teacher is Dr. Joseph Mercola. And when I say that, I just got to put my hand on my heart, go, Joseph Mercola, because he is one of the highest regarded doctors in the industry of the natural industry. So for those of you who'd like to learn more about Dr. Mercola, you can go to mercola.com, and you will learn just about anything it's a start of your journey, the start of the truth, and start of digging. And you get all the information, and then you do, like Dr. Mercola and I were talking during the break, you do the best you can with the information that you have. So Dr. Mercola, you've written about a lot. You've written many books, but this one, what we're going to talk about today, is Fat for Fuel. Fat for Fuel. Share a little bit about why did you write this book, and why now?
Well, I was initially motivated. I had interviewed many of the experts in the field, like Dr. Seyfried, Dominic D'Agostino, and I resonated with their concept because I had been encouraging people to go on a lower carbohydrate, especially refined carbohydrate, for a long time. But I didn't truly understand how it worked until I read Travis Christofferson's book, Tripping Over the Truth, the Metabolic Theory of Cancer, which was based on Dr. Thomas Seyfried's work, who is a professor of biology at Boston College. And he put it together in a really elegant way that I kind of saw the light and hit me. And I said, really, more people need to understand this. So I collaborated with about 24 of the leading experts in the field to make sure that the science was accurate. And it was an interesting project. First time I had done that type of writing before. And it worked. It really was resonated well, and it turned out to be, and I think it was last May it was published. It was the #1 nonfiction book sold in the United States. So,
wow. Wow. So let's talk about the concept of the book. You're talking about the mitochondria and the metabolic. This is an MMT. So share a little bit about this and why we need to know. You say in your book that we're losing the war on cancer because we've been fighting the wrong enemy. So share a little bit about this enemy that we have and how we can embrace being a friend of it.
Well, the enemy is really conventional medicine, and they're of the belief, almost all conventional oncologists, that cancer is caused by genetics. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. There are rare genetic diseases which can contribute to that, but for the most part, the genetic damage is a secondary consequence of oxidative damage and stresses, which disrupt the mitochondria. Mitochondria are these little tiny organelles. Most cells have about 200, some is 0 like your red blood cells, but most cells have them, and some mitochondria dense cells have thousands. So they perform a lot of interesting functions. The primary one is to capture electrons from the food you eat, primarily fats and sugars, and convert them through a very complex series of reactions into energy. And typically the currency is in the ATP, but it does a lot of other things too. So essentially, when you eat the wrong foods, and I'm currently working on 3 new books. One of them is on EMFs. I hope to be out in 2019, maybe 2020. And EMF exposure, which is a topic for a 3-hour podcast, is another pernicious factor that will contribute to oxidative stress and chronic degenerative diseases, such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and Alzheimer's, which are pervasive in our culture.
Okay, so it's interesting that you're focusing on that, and that's going to be your next book. I just recently interviewed Dr. Palermo that talked about the toxins in our body and
Mm-hmm.
all the different things that are causing issues. So I've just started diving into that truth. And so you're talking about the mitochondria and
Mm-hmm.
all the different things that affect the mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this fat for fuel and with the book that you've written with the mitochondria, we don't even think of that. We think of other things. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
our DNA is important. We can turn it on, you can turn it off. But the mitochondria, can we reverse disease by improving our mitochondria?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
And it's not only what you eat, which is a common discussion and source of major controversy, as you know.
Yes.
But it's even more importantly is what you don't eat and when you eat.
Okay.
And just a simple choice of choosing when you're going to eat can have profound impact on your mitochondria, as can other things like sleep and exercise. And exercise is particularly beneficial as it increases a metabolic pathway called PGC1 alpha, which causes the mitochondria to multiply, a term we call mitochondrial biogenesis. So there's so many things you can do, and unless you're going to be dead within a few weeks, which certainly maybe there's some people watching this that are in that scenario, then it's really hard to turn it around at that point. But unless you're in that scenario, almost all degenerative disease can be turned around.
Okay. That's, we talk about that on the show all the time. It's wonderful to get one more doctor on the show to repeat that, because there's so many commercials out there. There's so many doctors out there that believe that in medication management, and there's no, and I'm just going to put it that way, medication management. And the fact is that nothing can reverse disease better than our food. And like you're talking about rest and exercise. And so you said that it's so important to know when to eat, how to eat. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What do we need to know about that?
Well, most of us are eating too frequently. And if you look, I follow a principle called replicating ancestral practices and seeking to reproduce behaviors that our ancestors did under the supposition that that's likely going to produce health, because that's what our genes are optimized for. So if you take that approach, you'll find that none of our ancestors had access to food 24/7 like we do today.
Exactly.
And they regularly went through periods where they didn't eat. And in those cases, it was really starvation. But we almost never have to go through starvation now because we have access to the food. But we can go through something called fasting, and there's different ways that one can implement that. There's no right or wrong way necessarily, but limiting the number of foods you eat or time-restricted eating to maybe 6 or even 8 hours a day can have profound metabolic benefits. One of the worst mistakes people make is to eat before they go to bed, because you're giving your body fuel. The fuel creates oxidative stress if it's not used. And there's no way you're going to be using much energy when you're sleeping. So all this fuel and energy gets backed up. You create extra oxidative stress, which damages your mitochondria. And it can cause profound complications. So you really don't want to eat for at least 3 hours before you go to bed. I personally stop eating about 6 hours before I go to bed. And my girlfriend, Erin, doesn't share that approach, so it does lead to some social challenges sometimes. But a lot of times I'll just have water when we're together at night. So
with that in mind, so many, we trust our doctors, but all our doctors know what they know. They don't know everything, but so here's the thing that we need to become our own MDs, our medical detectives, as Richard Horowitz said on my show, the MD, medical detective. So with that in mind, how much fasting do you suggest in a day? So if we don't eat 3 hours before, and we need to get our restorative sleep between 10 and 2 in the morning, and what time do you suggest to break the fast if we were to go with that model?
Well, I think the basics is stop eating 3 hours before you go to sleep, whatever that time may be.
Okay. And when
There's
you
a
wake up?
significant percentage of the population that unfortunately has night shift, which is going to knock 10, 20 years off your lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
But when you wake up, it depends. There really is no right or wrong answer. Some people
Okay.
like to eat really big breakfasts. I happen to be one of them. My biggest meal of the day is breakfast, but that's because I start my breakfast about 10 o'clock or so, sometimes 11. And then I'll engage in a 5 or 6 hour walk after that. So if you had heavy labor, then that you want to eat your biggest meal around the biggest expenditure of calories a day. You have in day time, but almost everyone should have a very light dinner. So it's either breakfast or lunch. It's a 2-meal system. You could use snacks in there in between, of course, and macadamia nuts are a really great snack because they're really high in high quality fats, the same fats that are in olive oils, or similar fats as in olive oil, and they're low in protein and low in carbohydrate. And actually, that's, I think, one of the reasons why most vegetarians do better than the standard American diet, because they have their diet, vegetables are pretty low in protein.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a good thing. We typically don't need, most of us have too much protein.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, there are certainly scenarios where it's useful and important, but do you want to be careful about limiting the amount of protein you have, because that will lead to other complications.
Yeah, in your book, you talk about this formula of
Mm-hmm.
protein, and let's talk about protein. I've asked so many doctors, what is the right amount of protein for me? What is the
Mm-hmm.
right amount of protein? Because what's right for me may not be right for you.
Yeah.
And so can you share a little formula that you have in the book that'll help us understand and why too much protein is damaging?
Well, there's a fundamental metabolic pathway called mTOR, which is short for mammalian target of rapamycin, now termed mechanistic target of rapamycin, that essentially is a catabolic, it builds, I'm sorry, an anabolic pathway, so it builds muscle. And so the answer to your question is, it depends. I mean, if you're the average American, then you probably want to go for a few months with having very low amounts of protein until your body is taught to learn how to burn fat for fuel. But once you're healthy and like I suspect many of your listeners are, and you're burning fat for fuel, then you want to keep it down to, I'd say, 1 gram to maybe 0.8 grams per kilogram of lean body mass, which, for someone like yourself is about maybe 40 grams of protein a day,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a little lower. I try to keep mine under 60, somewhere between 50 and 60 grams on most days, unless I'm engaging in a strength training day. And then we enter into something cyclical amounts of protein. So the days when you're trying to build muscle, which I think you should, 2 or 3 days a week with strength training or other exercises, then you want to have higher protein intake.
Okay.
But if you have high protein intake all the time, that's not good, and low protein intake all the time, that's not good either. So your body is designed to go in cycles, and there is no, what is the optimum period of cycle? It really depends. So you have to listen to your body to figure it out. But usually 2 or 3 days a week of relatively higher protein, maybe 25% more protein, not 100 or 200 grams of protein like some bodybuilders.
And we're so obsessed with protein.
Yeah.
Oh, and when I eat a whole food plant-based, the first question people ask me is, where do you get your protein? What people don't understand is that there's protein in almost every vegetable. And
yes, not much, but it's definitely there, and it's high quality, and it's not high in methionine and some of the other potentially damaging amino acids.
Exactly. So because we are pound, not kilograms, we're per pound. So if I were to do like an average, I would say if I were to take my weight and divide it in half, would that be the equivalent of my protein?
Essentially, yeah, that's a rough estimate, yes.
Okay.
So, well, no, it'd be a little less than that because it's lean body mass. So if you're 10%, it would be closer if you're 10% body fat, but a healthy woman's going to be closer to 20%. So you have to multiply it by whatever your lean body mass is. So if you're 20%, that'd be 0.8 of lean body mass.
Got it. Okay, so for those of you who are listening, we're talking about the book, Fat for Fuel with Dr. Joseph Mercola, and we're going to continue our conversation with him when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Dr. Mercola, I have to ask you.
I got it that time.
Yeah, you were good. I should acknowledge you. That was awesome.
No. I'm just
no, because the first time I was like, but no, that was great. You did it. Okay, so I I heard you, because every time I see you, I don't know if you remember me, but every time I
No,
see
I remember you.
I give you my card and I say, you're going to come on my show someday. You're going to come on my show someday.
Yeah,
And
well, you
so,
can thank Erin for that.
well, you know what? And I told her to not even ask you. I told her don't, because I've got my manifestation going with the cards.
Yeah.
But that was nice of her to share it with you. So I am so grateful to her. So with that in mind, I was at the Best Answers for Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave a talk, and you had mentioned something about that when you first started doing this, what we talked about a lot of the ketogenic diet. You said that it kind of like there was a backlash for you. It's what I understood, that perhaps you did it. Are there any
negative consequences? Yes. Because I was doing it persistently, right? Yeah, and I lost far too much weight, and I did not look healthy. And there was a reason why I didn't look healthy. You know why?
Why?
Because I wasn't.
But you know what? A lot of men that are slender, or a lot of people that are slender, when you lose any weight, and I call it releasing, because I don't lose anything, because I try to find it again. Yeah. So when everybody's going to say, oh, you look sick. Well, even if you lose weight. So that happened to my husband. So with my husband, when he started eating a whole food plant-based diet, he started releasing weight, and people was like, are you sick? Are you sick? Are you sick? So he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, we're so obsessed with fat. We're so overweight that when you're healthy, people say you look sick. So with you, because you've been healthy, when you lost the extra weight.
No. I would disagree. Okay. I think there's value to people's subjective impressions.
Okay.
Because it's biologically entrained in us over multiple centuries and thousands of generations. So we intuitively can identify healthy people. I mean, it's not a mystery. It's a foundational characteristic of humans.
I like that.
So if that's why I listened to it, and they were right. I really wasn't that healthy, and that's before I understood the importance of cycling it in. And once I cycled and then integrated some of the other new truths I'm under identifying at this point, then my whole life turned around. It was just like unbelievable. Now at 64, I'm probably the healthiest I've ever been.
Well, you look great. You look great at any age. So with that in mind, I'd love to talk about the benefits of ketogenic, because this MMT, the mitochondrial metabolic therapy, with that's AKA ketogenic lifestyle.
Cyclical ketogenic. That's an important term that needs to be integrated, because simple straight out ketogenic will wind you up the way I wound up, not being very healthy.
But you see, this is the thing. When I first learned, I interviewed Dr. Thomas Seyfried, and
great guy. I loved Thomas.
Loved him. It was the first. This was at the beginning when I was beginning to learn about how food is medicine and how food can help us or it can hurt us. And Dr. Seyfried had mentioned something about that this is great for cancer. But then all of a sudden I'm hearing people doing this every day in their life. And I'm thinking, this is kind of like, it didn't resonate with me. So when I went to the Best Answers for Cancer, there was a bit of me that there were all these women like, oh, you want to do this all the time. To me, that was not, it didn't resonate in my body. They don't understand
it. They're still on their learning path.
And the people that were saying, and it's interesting that you would say that, one of the people I interviewed, and she was saying, oh, I do this all the time. This is exactly how I eat all the time. And I'm thinking, she doesn't look healthy.
Yeah. There you go.
So I get that. Now that you say that, I get that. Yeah. That, we have this intuition that we just squash down. But in Robert's case,
or some other intellectual academic truth.
Yes, exactly. Well,
it's supposed to be better.
Or also financially, she has to profit if everybody does it. So we've got to balance that. How much is my true belief in this, or am I benefiting from this? There's so many different people that kind of mix that. So, when we come back, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my social media, and then I'll reintroduce you to Mercola. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, we're halfway there. Can you believe it?
Text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we are heard worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I'm your host, Lillian McDermott, and it is my goal that everyone who's in front of me become my teacher. Now, people can teach you how to be, or they can teach you how not to be. Fortunately, the teachers we have on the show are absolutely amazing and teach us new truths on how to embrace the life of your dream, a life that is embracing health, that is not about the myths that we were created. We were indoctrinated to believe a certain way that is profiting the medical industry, the cancer industry, that's profiting we were talked about not too long ago about the baby formula industry. And so there's so many different things out there that we've got to just discern. And so that's what this show is about. It's about taking responsibility for our own life and learning this new truth that will allow us to heal every cell in our body as naturally as possible. I'm not against the pill. I'm for taking responsibility, doing everything we possibly can to make sure we have the life that we want. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please become a subscriber. And when you become a subscriber, the show gets sent to you. You also get some free gifts. While you're there, I want to encourage you to check out all the little buttons for my social media. Like me there. Go to my YouTube video. This show, you get the show on the air, but off the air, we have some conversations that we cannot have on the air. So go to my YouTube channel, subscribe there, and that will be sent to you as well. I want to encourage you, when you're in my website at whenyouneedafriend.com, that you check out my sponsors. Without my sponsors, this show would not happen. So make sure you go to my sponsors, figure out ways that you can support them the way that they are supporting the show. And also, I have not given you the number, but anybody who's listening to this show, if you have any questions for my guests, you can call 407-373-5959. Call or text 407-373-5959. And also, if you like podcasts, you can find me on demand, YouTube, Google Play Music, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. So today we have Dr. Joseph Mercola. He's sharing the information about his book called Fat for Fuel, but you can find Dr. Mercola at mercola.com. He also has an incredible podcast, interviews so many different people, where he's on his new truth journey as well. And I'm so much learning from him, and have loved learning from him through the years. Whether he knew it or not, he knows he's making a difference. So Dr. Mercola, thank you so much for being on the Lillian McDermott radio show.
Well, thank you for having me, Lillian.
So off the air, we talked about the fact that I've seen you so many different times talking, and every time I see you and I take a picture, I hand you my card. You're going to be on my show someday. You're going to be on my show someday. And I love the fact that you're here. It's like this vision. You're here. Now I get to ask you some of the questions about this ketogenic. So many people are saying, okay, ketogenic, you use your own fat and you're converting your own fat for fuel. And that's all wonderful. But I had heard you share, and we talked about this off the air just a little while ago, and I wanted to have people listen to that everything has side effects. Let's talk about the side effects of the ketogenic diet and how important it is to use this cyclically, like you had mentioned off the air.
Well, it's a very powerful tool that almost everyone watching this would benefit from. We have an epidemic of insulin resistance resulting in diabetes and all the other chronic degenerative diseases. But if you look at a refined assessment of measuring insulin resistance, the estimates are that about 80%, or 4 out of 5 of your listeners, are insulin resistant. So applying a low-carb, high-fat, adequate protein, low protein for most people, is going to push your metabolism to the point where it'll get rid of this insulin resistance. The problem, the complication is if you think that's the world's best diet and you do that continuously after your body has regained the capacity to burn fat for fuel, that's dangerous. And it's a mistake that I made. And before I understood that it's really important to go into cycles, and that once you achieve the ability to burn fat for fuel, then you need to regularly integrate back in healthy carbohydrates, not Cheetos and Twinkies, but healthy carbohydrates like sweet potatoes, like Jerusalem artichokes, and lots of good carbohydrates that ostensibly would be off of the menu if you were on a low carb diet, but they have but your body needs them for a number of reasons. One of the primary ones is your gut microbiome. They need the fuel and those fibers to build, to create energy and create a population that will synergize with your biology to improve your health.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, let's talk about this ketogenic or the mitochondrial metabolism therapy, which is what the MMT that you focus on in the book. You had said many times or earlier, you said, it's how you eat, what you eat, when you eat. Let's talk a little bit about
and what you don't eat.
What you don't eat. Okay,
Steve Country would say it's more important what you don't eat than what you eat.
So let's go. If it's more important what you don't eat, so let's talk about what you don't eat. Let's go there.
Sure. You don't want to eat processed foods. That's the number one thing. And an important subset of that would be two foods: oils and sugar. So processed sugars are out. But probably the most pernicious and dangerous food that you can eat is a processed oil. And many presentations, especially cancer presentations, I'll ask the audience how many people have flaxseed oil, and if it's a cancer audience, almost everyone raises their hands. I says, okay, well then close your eyes and think of a relative or a neighbor that you don't like and give them the flaxseed oil, because you should throw it away. Yes, okay, because any industrially processed oil is going to be a problem. Now, theoretically, you could extract the flaxseed oil and put it in a special container with nitrogen flushing and brown bottle, and it would be good until you open it up, and then it starts to go rancid. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't have flax seeds. I have a tablespoon of flax seeds every day, but I put them in my smoothie, and I fill it with water the night before, so they're soaking for 12 hours, which gets rid of, yes.
After you grind them?
I don't grind them.
You don't grind them?
No, I use flax seeds, I use chia seeds, and I use fenugreek. And I put the seeds and I soak them for 12 hours. And then I put the smoothie, and I put a whole variety of other nutrients in there too, such as a whole egg. Usually just one egg is what I have for my breakfast, just one egg. That's my primary protein source. So that's only 7 grams. And there's, of course, some protein in some of the seeds, but not much, maybe 3 or 4 grams. So then you'll get the important essential fatty acids. And I am a believer that you need to get higher order essential fats, so the omega-3s, such as the EPA and the DHA, which you can only get from marine foods.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you don't need ALA from plant foods like chia or hemp and flax, but you're going to need a supplement to that. I mean, some people would disagree. I think Gregor disagrees with that, but we have a friendly debate on it. But all the literature I reviewed points to the fact that you would benefit from that. That's why I actually prefer krill as a form of phospholipids, and I take that on a pretty regularly to complement it. But essentially, any industrially processed oils, the omega-6, not only is it high in omega-6, but it has the processing damages the oil in a way that it becomes highly toxic, and worse, it gets integrated into your cell membranes, and it takes a long time to remove that. So, and the other food you don't want to eat is, we talked about processed foods, but you want to have organic foods. And unfortunately, that label is being bastardized as they've created more and more loopholes in it. But the primary reason that you want to have healthy foods that are grown without toxins and poisons, like glyphosate. I was reading a study this morning from Stephanie Senefit just posted that she had said this for a while, but there was no literature to support it. But now a study popped up that indeed, the glyphosate is given the name glyphosate, which is sprayed on the earth at about 5 billion pounds a year. The gly in glyphosate stands for glycine, which is a very common amino acid. And the glycine, and it's essentially phosphorylated, so it's a water-soluble phosphate, organophosphate poison. But it gets integrated into your actual protein structure. So you can, even though it's water soluble, you can easily detoxify that literally from your body within a short amount of time, literally days. You can't detoxify the protein structure. You have to get rid of that protein once that glyphosate is integrated into the protein. So there's A lot of consequences. So that's 3 examples: toxic fats, sugar, processed foods, and organics to can avoid glyphosate and other things like 2,4-D and atrazine and all the other poisons.
So
they put in food.
I had a doctor come on, Dr. Mercola, say that 65% of the rain has glyphosate. Is that
That's
something?
true.
Really?
Yeah, but that's not so much of an issue because the soil microbiome can easily detoxify it, and it
Great.
gets, especially the mycorrhizal fungi. So that's not a problem. And you know, but it's true. But and it's concerning that it shows how pervasive it is in the environment. But it's the key is what you put in your body. That's what's more important.
Okay, so for those of you who are listening, we're talking to Dr. Joseph Mercola. And if you're just tuning in, this is a treat because Dr. Mercola is followed by so many. He's led the trail. So many years ago, he started learning this new truth. And because he's been able to share it with all of us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can hear what he has to say, research everything that you hear on the show. I love to encourage you to make it your truth. It's our truth right now. So it's your responsibility to make it your truth. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Joseph Mercola when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Okay, so I just went to the IFM conference. And do you know Robert Roundtree? Do you know who he is?
I've heard of him.
Well,
I don't remember exactly what it does though.
He said something that was just so profound, and I want to share it with you, see what your insight is on this. He said that, we talk about autoimmune diseases as, the body attacking itself. And so he said that the body is actually doing exactly what it needs to do. The problem is that we have, our body is overloaded with toxins and they're embedded in our organs. So he said an autoimmune disease is the body trying to get rid of the toxins, our modified self, the toxins in our organs. Is that something that you have been able to research and look into to see what your opinion is on that?
Yeah, that's one of the books I'm writing is on detox, and it's certainly an important component. But most people, even expert clinicians like Dr. Roundtree, are relatively clueless about the fundamental molecular mechanisms that are involved. So that's what I'm doing deep dives in now. And my next book is actually, was started out as a paper for publication, but is evolving into a book because it's up to 70 pages and about 300 references now. But
wow.
It involves some of the molecular mechanisms like NAD and NADPH, which is an important electron donator that has to be functioning well. Otherwise, your detox pathways in your liver, phase 1 detox pathways, don't work well at all. And there's a lot of other adjunctive therapies that are not fully appreciated. Many people get it, but the infrared sauna and then the specifics, so like, is it far, is it near, is it electromagnetic free, are the electrical fields a problem? So, and then some of the chelators that you use and the fibers. So it's a very complex topic. And I was actually going to write the whole book on the detox, but I think I was going to veer off to even a more fundamental, foundational understanding of the mechanisms you've got to get right before you think about detox. But you have to get rid of toxins. There's no question about it. And simply engage in some basic foundational strategies can do it relatively easily. It's not that hard to do.
So detoxifying the organs from these glyphosates, where does a glyphosate go to in the body? I mean, if we're consuming products that
glyphosate is water soluble, so it's excreted relatively quickly.
Okay.
Literally within hours or days at the most. The problem is that while it's circulated in the system, it gets integrated into the protein structure.
Okay.
So glyphosate isn't that hard to remove chemically, as long as you don't have a new source coming in every day like most people do. In fact, I've had my levels tested, but the way that you test it is glyphosate concentration in your urine, and you have to measure in parts per trillion. And the sensitivity test is about 40 parts per trillion. So mine level is undetected, but what the current diagnostic tests don't assay is the level of glyphosate that's integrated into your proteins. That I don't even know if an assay for that exists. I mean, you have to do some very sophisticated research studies, with radio-labeled isotopes and stuff, and it'd be really hard to do.
Wow, there's so much we don't know. Yeah. I'm so grateful.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn with one another. And today's teacher is Dr. Joseph Mercola. What a treat to have Dr. Mercola on the show. For those of you who want to learn more about Dr. Mercola, you can go to mercola.com. Also, the book Fat for Fuel, you can find it at whenyounneedafriend.com. Just click on to my Lily's Kitchen. We still need to rename that, and the book is there just for you to go in there and quickly get it. If you are wanting to learn a little bit more about how to use your fat for fuel. Remember, this is something that is cyclical. Always use what is your advice for someone who would like to try this regarding, getting working with a doctor that may not understand what this is all about? What is your
Well, the book is specifically written so that you don't need a doctor. It's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The only potential complication is if you're taking medications, especially high blood pressure medications or diabetic medications, because those conditions will tend to improve, if not resolve completely, while you start the program. So you have to carefully monitor your blood sugar or your blood pressure to make sure you're wean off of those properly. So that's where you may need a clinician. But with respect to implementing it, is pretty straightforward. I mean, pretty much it's what your body's designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that you have to be a little aggressive, and there's a bit of discomfort initially for most people because they're so out of rhythm sync with what their body's requirements are.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're engaged and once you're in the cyclical ketosis program, the biggest fear or concern for most people is that they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
This fear of hunger. Well, that hunger disappears. It is just gone. And for many people, especially those who struggle with weight or have diabetes, even a more aggressive fasting program, which is I've got a book coming out, Super Fuel, which goes into the fats that we talked about in the last segment, but
Mm-hmm.
that comes out in the fall. But the one after that is called Keto Fast, where you're doing ketosis and fasting. It talks about all the different ways of fasting and what a powerful intervention that can be. And I'm writing it with the director of the True North Medical Clinic, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who is, they've fasted 16,000 people up to 40 days. So that's the biggest fasting clinic in North America. So 5-day water fasts are useful. And I think they're really the key of this book. I mean, it's not just done to rephrase and rehash what's been done, but it's going to introduce one of the most powerful strategies that I've ever encountered, which is the 5-day water fast, except it's modified based on Dr. Balter with a V, Balter Longo's work, and where we compile a list of recipes. And I'm working with Pete Evans, who is the celebrity chef in Australia, who's been ostracized because of his ketosis approach.
Yeah.
But I wrote my last keto cookbook with him, and he put together all these recipes where like 400 or 500 calories, essentially all vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And for 5 days, you just have these unbelievable vegetables, which are full of all these phytonutrients that radically improve your liver's ability to, and actually all your cells, but primarily your liver's ability to detox. Because when you fast, most people, I didn't understand it. The first 5-day water fast I didn't understand that that's one of the most powerful detoxing interventions you can possibly have.
Yes.
No question about it. The problem is, the reason why most people get sick is that their bodies are not metabolically supported to process those toxins properly, and they get recycled and reabsorbed. And so you've got to do it really carefully. And this fasting mimicking diet, which will give you most of the benefits of fasting, will support your detox pathways pretty well, especially if you integrate it with things like near infrared saunas.
And as people decide to do toxing, I remember Dr. Joel Fuhrman had mentioned that people need to be careful when they start doing these fasting, and when they do these juice fast or the water fast, that many people have so many toxins and so much chemicals in their body that once they start releasing it, they really get sick. So how do you suggest that someone, before they decide to do a fast of any kind or do radically change their diet, what should they do?
The other component that Dr. Fuhrman didn't address, and that's primarily because he is burning fat for fuel. There's no question.
Correct.
Most vegetarians are. I mean, it's just not an issue. So is that your body has to burn fat for fuel. So most people are not. And so I suggest that they work their way up to the point where they're not eating food for 20 hours a day, time restricted eating. So they're only eating in a 4-hour window, and you do that for a month. And then there's no question they're going to be able to step into the 5-day water fast easily. And in fact, most people who engage in it will be really hungry by day 2 or 3, and then the hunger disappears, but they won't even have any of that hunger. It's just not there, which is amazing. So, but the thing that's most people you have to integrate is some type of sweat therapy, and sauna therapy would be the best. The best type of sauna, I believe, is near infrared. That's with the heat lamp bulbs, not the far infrared, which will heat you up and cause you to sweat. But unfortunately, there is no far infrared sauna that I am aware of that is truly EMF free. They may have low magnetic fields, but they have radio frequency fields just from the environment that you're exposed to, but more importantly, the electric fields. So, and then, you're not getting the wavelengths because they start about 2,000 nanometers. So you need the lower wavelengths to recharge your mitochondria and restructure the water in your body. So a near infrared sauna, for 30 minutes, sweating the toxins out, because the majority of the toxins can be released through the sweat. You don't have to process them through the bile and the kidney and liver. So you can just sweat them out and just be really careful about washing those towels that you're collecting the sweat on, because there are a lot of toxins in there.
Wow. Wow. So, okay. So you had mentioned earlier in the segments that we need to be careful with organics. Now, there's been it's been confusing to me, because you see organics, then you see organics non-GMO, then you see a GMO without the organics word. What should we be looking for, Dr. Mercola, when it comes to our food supply? Because, we are what we eat. And so
great question. Ideally, you want to grow your own food, and I know that's not possible. But if you think out of the box, it is. Even if you live in an apartment, you can find a community garden, and for a good portion of the year, you can have access to the vegetables and foods that you're growing yourself. And I mean, I grow most of the food that I eat, so. But I live in Florida, so it's a little easier to do. But there's greenhouses that you can use, and so if you're not able to do that, or if you need a supplement, then you need to identify sources of food that you can confirm are essentially pesticide-free, especially glyphosate. So it may involve visiting the farm, from the farmer's market that you're going to, or some way certifying personally and assuring that the regular food consumption you have is going to be an issue. And another important point of that, though, is that if you're in a restaurant, virtually, unless there are some exceptions, there's no question, but they're like really the rare exception. You have to be really careful of any meat you eat in a restaurant. I virtually rarely eat meat in a restaurant, and if I'm going to eat meat, I will never eat chicken. It's almost 100% guaranteed. It's the most dangerous meat you can possibly eat.
Really?
Yes, because of the way they're raised. They're almost all CAFO, confined animal feeding operations, and they're sick and they're infected, full of toxins. These are animals you do not. Now, if it's a neighbor or it's a relative raising chickens in their backyard, that's a totally different animal, and that's fine. But they're not selling that in restaurants.
No.
So stay away from the chicken, and it'll keep you healthier. And normally I don't even. I only eat probably a few ounces, maybe half a pound of meat a month or something. It's pretty uncommon. Sometimes there's many months I don't go with eating meat at all.
Yeah.
But but I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be avoided if you're careful about the source, and it's a healthy animal that you're eating.
Yeah. So that you're looking at the farm raised or grass fed.
Yeah, American Grass Fed Certified is the best label out there right now. American AGA certified.
And of course, most people think that they're only finding their source of protein in animal products, but once again, the vegetables and all the fruits that we have that have
fruits don't have hardly any protein.
Well, I mean,
vegetables separate.
Food. I meant to say foods. The vegetables that we have the proteins that we need, and that is sufficient for most people, right? Okay. One last word, because we're coming to the end. Anything that you would like to share with our listening and viewer friends about health, and what was the most important thing for you?
Well, so basically sleep, exercise, movement on a regular basis, and choosing the right foods are probably some of the key things. But the key is to learn. Remember, I'm a constant perpetual student, and I hope you would be too. So our website, Mercola.com, MERCOLA.com, is a tremendous resource. It's been out for 21 years. Got a search engine at the top of every page. Type in a question if you have a question, and you'll come up with hundreds of pages of something we've written on. But more importantly, the new information I'm learning is going to be on there. So
Wonderful. Wonderful,
that's the
Dr.
key.
Mercola. Thank you so much for being on the Lillian McDermott radio show today. And I am looking forward to maybe someday having another conversation with you. And to you, my listening friends, it's another option for you. Do your research, make it your truth, and choose wisely. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
Ever.
That's the best ever, Dr. Mercola. Thank you so much for this information. I'm looking forward to learning and learning more about this. I've been wanting to do a water fast.
What I told you was the baby stuff.
I know.
What I am working on now is the advanced PhD program. That is like every day I'm blowing my mind. I'm reading molecular biological journals and just diving through from the top experts in the world on stuff that won't be widely known for the next 10 years. I mean, it's just the most amazing thing.
It's a lot on
I
you.
jump out of bed and just can't wait to start reading these things. I have 100 studies queued up that I need to read. And most of the studies are 20 to 50 pages. So.
How do you do it? We're still recording, by the way.
Okay.
How do you do it, Dr. Mercola? How do you keep that balance? First of all, to me, I'm a certified life coach.
Yeah.
Fear is one of the things that controls us.
Well, many people, not all of us.
Well, yeah, many people. Control the food industry, the cancer industry,
it's a powerful
motivation.
motivation.
Very powerful motivator.
For marketing, sure.
If the EMFs, I mean, even in the natural health food industry, there's that fear. If you do this, if you do this, if you do that, how do you keep that balance? Because fear, to me, is a high, can trump all the good stuff that we're doing. If we're afraid that something's going to happen, the thought alone can manifest it in our lives.
Yes, and
what's your advice for that? How do you keep balance?
Well, there's a great physician, PhD, MD, PhD. No, just psychiatrist actually. I forgot his name though. He wrote the book. It was really powerful when my mom passed away. It's a book that got me out of the grief that I was going through. But God, his name is escaping me, which is frustrating. But anyway,
was it Emron?
David Hawkins. David
Hawkins.
Yeah, I love that man. The last book he wrote was Surrendering the Truth. But throughout all the books he writes, he talks about the emotional components, and he actually gives them a number from 0 to 1,000. And fear is very, very low, and he ultimately go to love and joy at the top. Correct. Peace, and so I love David's work. So, but anyway, so the key thing is to focus on forget those things. Those things just they're not present once you're in these higher levels. You're not, that's not a motivation, and it's not something that can capture you. When people try to make you afraid of something, you have a deeper truth that, essentially guards you against succumbing to that.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
I'm glad I remember David's name. It was a great book.
I'll check him out. I'll check him out.
Tripping over the truth. It was the last book he wrote. It literally, I was in grief for 2 or 3 weeks. My mom died just a little over a year ago, July 6th last year, unexpectedly. She was 81, and I was able to help her circumvent any of the traditional medical challenges. She did not die from a medical mistake. She had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease from a lifelong smoker, and I just loved her. And I thought she would last at least 5 more years. So it was a real shock. And I had a lot of grief to process. And his book actually helped me do it. It was the most profoundly simple yet powerful exercise in resolving the grief I was experiencing.
More and more doctors are coming on the show.
Pathway to Surrender, I think.
I just pulled up his website.
Is it Pathway to Surrender the last one?
I am. Let me see. Let me look at his books. Letting Go, Healing, Reality.
Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender.
Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender.
That's it. That's Letting Go. That's it. That is definitely one of the best books I've ever read.
That's wonderful.
Just magnificent, truthful. And he's not that his other books were great too, but that was the best for me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so wonderful that you would acknowledge him. The more and more doctors are coming on the show, and this is the aspect that I talk about, healing.
People acknowledged him. His people acknowledged him before?
No, you're the first one that I've that has acknowledged this particular book or his particular work. So I'll have to check it out.
He is magnificent. I mean, especially a lot of energy medicine people. I mean, he
Yes.
passed away like 3 or 4 years ago.
What a shame.
There's a lot of people I really regret not having the opportunity to interview, and he would be one of them.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Every single doctor has been coming on and saying the same thing, that most disease, if not all, is emotionally, it has an emotional component to
Oh
it.
yeah, they all pretty much all do. Everyone
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
But when you go into the allopathic community, they want to circumvent that. They're like, your childhood traumas, none of that matters. You're just going to take this pill, and so many people fall into this pill mill type of hamster wheel, and then of course they listen to me, which I talk about, the mind, body, spirit approach to healing. Yeah, food is important, but those thoughts that you're thinking about that food, or about why you're eating the food, or what else is going on in your life, is even as important, and to heal that. And so it's good to know that even though you have all this the aspect of nutrition and the biological and all the physiological, understand all of that, that you still were able to understand the importance of the emotional aspect and how to heal and let go and surrender.
Yeah, I agree.
And how wonderful that you sought after it.
I would highly recommend picking up his book, though.
I will. I'll
Letting
check
go. It's an easy read, but it's just profoundly deep and fundamental concepts.
And most people, and this is something that just recently, when I'm coaching somebody, I hear this over and over and over again. People don't want to deal with their stuff, their grief or whatever, because they know it's going to be painful.
Right. He goes into that in the book in great detail.
Yeah, but then they drag that pain with them everywhere they go.
Right. Yeah, it's the worst thing.
Yeah.
It just makes it much worse.
Yeah, that's
Whereas
right.
if they embraced it and surrendered to it, as he talks about in the book, I mean, it's just it literally is nothing short of a miracle what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Dr. Mercola, for leading us in so many different ways. I watched your interview with when you learned a new truth about vaccines. And that was very touching. It shows how much you really care, and the passion that you have for what you do. So I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to say thank you personally to you, because you've done a lot of wonderful things for the natural food and the natural health industry. And I hope that you feel very proud of all the accomplishments. The fact that you haven't stopped growing is even so refreshing, because
my best work's in front of me, that's for sure.
That's well, I think it's all around you. So thank you so much, Dr. Mercola. Okay. And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we turn off the camera?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your.
All right, you have a great day. The best day ever.
Good job.